Hello, my name is Myron Friedman. I'm the Executive Director of the Hayward Area Historical Society. And today's show is about the Meek Mansion. Meek Mansion is in the Cherryland community of the greater Hayward area. It's part of unincorporated Alameda County in San Francisco's East Bay community. The Meek Mansion is a wonderful architectural gem prized by the entire region. And today we're going to show you some images and give you some information about this historic treasure. To start things off, I'd like to introduce Diane Curry, who's the curator and archivist of the Hayward Area Historical Society. She'll give you some history about the family and the house and show you some wonderful images from the collections of the Hayward Area Historical Society. Here's Diane.
William Meek was born in 1816 in Ohio, and he moved down here with his family, his fourth wife, and three children, in 1859, and started buying up property. William Meek was the largest landowner in the Hayward area at one time. We have the living legacy of his wealth and family in the form of his mansion and the Meek Estate Park over on Hampton and unincorporated Hayward. Also, there's just so much that's named in honor of Meek and their family and all that they accomplished in this area. Starting in the early 1860s up until the time the family moved away from the area in the late 1930s. At one time they owned almost 3,000 acres. William, I tend to think, probably was a very progressive gentleman. Everybody participated in the family. He was very family oriented. You know, he wanted his family there. Seems to have been very involved in education and interested in women's education, that he wanted his daughters to be educated, and he had three daughters. Two of them I know went to Mills College, and he helped establish, he was served on the board of Mills College in the late 1870s. He also was on the Board of Regents at University of California, Berkeley. He was also on the school board for San Lorenzo. In 1861, William Meek became Alameda County Supervisor. He served 3 terms in that capacity. So there are records in accounts of the early county history of him, how he voted on certain measures. He was involved with a short-lived coal mine, and then he also was involved with establishing societies. He was president of the Alameda County Agricultural Society and the Trotting Association. Most of the big things that would still have lasting impact now are from his son, and he learned it obviously from the father. It was his son who brought the interurban railway to Hayward, connecting Hayward to Oakland and the bigger metropolitan areas. The family also brought, it's his sons, also brought the Hunt's Cannery to town. They donated the land that made it possible for the Hunt brothers to open their cannery here in town. The sons were also involved with the Bank of Hayward's. They were on the board for the Bank of Hayward's school district. They were involved with establishing the Union High School district. They didn't donate land, but they did help get the school district established. William actually had, he had a number of children, but several of them died. He had 5 surviving children. The oldest being Horry Meek. So Sarah Charlotte, Horry, Susie, Willie, and Ethel all survived their father. We don't know a lot about the people who worked on the property, actually. For the house, for who were the servants in the house, we have census records that we can go to. And with census records, they would document all the people who actually lived in the house. So from going through, and census, of course, is every 10 years. So we can tell that at some point, and I can't remember which years or which, but there were at least 1 or 2 Chinese servants who lived in the house who were listed as cooks, and then 1 to 2 women who were primarily Irish, or I think Irish primarily, who were servants. occasionally you also see a nurse listed, so that depends on who had the youngest child or the youngest children who was living in the house at that time. So throughout all the different family members who lived in the house, that appears to be the main servants who were in the house. They grew everything. Cherries, of course, was a big thing. Wheat, other grains, currants, all sorts of fruits and vegetables. Those were, he grew just about everything, it seems like. The biggest production seems to be cherries and, I think, apricots. So everything that we know about the business is based on references in the newspaper talking about, Meeks have sold, or just harvested their crop of cherries or things like that, how many bushels of wheat they've bundled and things like that. There are some references in the newspapers. And then general agricultural history of California in the late 19th century. After Mr. Meek died, he actually left the property to all of his children equally. But the foreman was his son, Horry. So Horry seems to have been the one who, as the eldest son, really sort of took over the family business. His family moved into the house. He and his wife had moved over into the cottage as well, and so they moved into the big house, and Horry then ran the business with his brother Willie. After Horry passed away, his son Harold became the foreman for the property. Horry died in 1910. Harold took over management of the property. Harold also shared the running of the business with his sisters and their husbands, but again, Harold seemed to have been the one who was actually operating the business. And Harold and his family moved into the big house. In the early 1930s, Harold's wife, Marguerite, died in the house, and it seems not long after that he didn't want to live there anymore. So he remarried, and he moved his family up to the Central Valley, up towards Woodland. And the house seems to have been empty for a few years, and he eventually sold it in about 1939, 1940. It was put up on the market. It was bought by Dr. Ream and his family. I believe he was a dentist. Dr. Ream and his family lived there until the 1960s, when they decided it was just too much house for them as they were getting older. And through a series of events, it was going to be torn down for a housing development, and somebody was interested in it, and the typical what to do with an old property. HARD, the Hayward Area Recreation Department, stepped in and purchased the house.
William Meek built the house in 1869, and the Meek family lived in it until the late 1930s. In 1976, Hayward held a centennial, and during that time they interviewed citizens who had been around for the duration of the history or thereabouts. So we're fortunate to have on tape one of Meek's granddaughters, Gladys Volkman, recalling her memories of the house and doing work around the Meek Mansion and the estate and for the family business. She's got a lot of wonderful tales to tell, so enjoy Gladys Volkman's memories.
For years there was a Chinese camp on the place, and their camp was made up of just bamboo stuff, and curtains and everything, just regular camp then. They took care of themselves, did their own cooking and everything, and they worked principally in the vegetable garden.
How many were in that camp?
Oh, I guess there must have been about 25 or so.
Was it all men?
No, families.
Families.
And then the time the Chinese weren't allowed in this country anymore,
Exclusion.
the Chinese camp went out and a Japanese camp came in. So we had a Japanese camp there for a good many years.
And then the Japanese took care of the gardens.
No, they didn't. They weren't in the gardens. No, that garden was my business.
It was?
Yes. My father had two very fine gardeners working there, and he discharged them one day. And he told me that he'd given me two of the Portuguese on the place. See, most of the men that worked on the place were from the Azore Islands. And they lived round about, but he gave me these men to work in the garden and told me to take over. And he gave me John McLaren's book. John McLaren is one who built Golden Gate Park. And to read about, he wrote a book about raising flowers for the state of California. And I was told to go to work on that, and I did.
What did you do?
I raised seeds, raised bulbs. I did flowers in the house, arranged flowers. Did anything I could do with flowers. Oh, it was beautiful land, and we had all the horses there on the place. We had all that wonderful manure and everything that you could need to for things. We didn't have any of the fancy things they use nowadays, but everything grew. It was a very big garden, had a great big fountain, you'd call it, old-time fountain. And everything growing there. Oranges that my grandfather raised from seed, big orange trees. And we had lots of black walnut trees and all kinds of flowers.
I see.
Even had a greenhouse. We raised things in the greenhouse. I rode every chance I got.
Where could you ride from there? Where were places that you went?
Well, you could ride from there to San Leandro, you could ride to San Lorenzo, you could ride to Hayward, you could ride to Niles.
It's a long way. What did the town of Hayward look like in those days?
Well, it was just a little town.
Dirt roads?
Oh yes, we didn't have anything but dirt roads. And they had a dancing class in Hayward, and they had a building there and used to have a dance. And all your friends would go. You'd have a nice dance, and it was the early days of automobiles, and you weren't supposed to ride anywhere in between dances at all. But I remember one night we disappeared in somebody's automobile. Some boy had an automobile there, and my father came in and wanted to know who'd been out riding. Well, nobody seemed to have been out riding, and he said, well, one car has been down as far as Niles. And nobody knew how he knew it, but the tires were covered with mud, and it was the only road that was cut open. They were working on at the time, and he'd happened to have been down there that day, and he knew the road was open and wet.
So he knew.
He knew where we'd been.
Uh-huh.
We all got sent home from the party.
So now you've learned a little bit about the history of the house, William Meek and his family, and you've heard from Gladys Volkman, who actually grew up in the house. We're lucky to have this architectural gem still here in this community. Hayward Area Historical Society is embarking on a project to restore the interior of the house and eventually operate it as a historic house museum. Heather Farquhar, collections manager, is leading Sean Reinhardt, director of the Hayward Library, through the house, showing him the rooms and pointing out some of its wonderful architectural features. Take a look.
Right now we're in what would have been the company or the front parlor. And this room in particular would have been one where a lot of money was put into because it would have been the one that was the most public. You can see that in the decorative features in the ceiling in particular. Not only is it decorative plaster-wise, but it would have been very colorful as well. The decorative plaster ceilings, as you can see, are very detailed, which shows off the money that the family had, because not in every household would you see this amount of detail. The floors in here are actually not wood floors like they would appear. They're what they call wood carpets. They were popular around the time the house was built and for a few years thereafter. Basically what it is thin pieces of wood that have been attached to a linen backing, and you could buy them in rolls through the Sears catalog, and when they arrived you just rolled them out and put them in place. Fireplaces are original to the house. You'll also notice that they are marble, but they're also a very white marble, which we have been told even back in the day when the house was built it was a very expensive stone to be found. So once again it shows that the family had money. The window that you see here is obviously different from the other windows in the house, as it's basically almost a ceiling to floor window, and it's what they call a coffin window. Back in the Victorian times and around the turn of the century, it was believed bad luck to bring a coffin through a threshold. So instead they brought them through a window. The solarium is basically like a large enclosed porch, and it would have originally been furnished with a lot of wicker style furniture, and it would have been a place where the family came to relax. And as you can see, there's a lot of windows in here, so it got a lot of light, and probably there would have been plants and things like that in here as well. We are currently in the dining room. This room we are going to be restoring to what we're calling the expansion era, which is the second generation of the family.
And what years are that?
1894 to approximately 1920. Some of the features in here that are kind of unique, one is the ceiling in particular. We've been told by decorative plaster people that there's very few houses still have this type of ceiling. You notice that it has a recessed backing.
Yeah, it's really deep looking and 3D.
It is, and they figure that it stopped being a form utilized around 1870. And because of the delicate nature of it, there's not too many ceilings like this, so this is one thing that we really do want to show off in the house. The chandelier here is also original to the house. It was actually custom ordered by the Meeks from Germany. Originally it would have been gas lighting on it. The radiant heat system that's in the house is actually original to the house and has been completely restored to working order by the Park District. The room you're in right now would have been the butler's pantry, and it's adjacent to the kitchen, both of which are part of what we're calling the third time period, or the last Meek era, which dates from approximately 1920 to 1940 when the house was sold to the Reams. It's a great example of late 20s, early 30s interior decor. We're going to take you down into the cistern now, which is where they would have gathered water, and currently is kind of a fun feature in the house.
So this is where they stored their water?
This is where they would have gathered water.
Was it rainwater or was it well water?
Rainwater mostly, I believe.
Did they take the water out from up above here?
My guess is they probably would have, yes.
Okay, I think I know what this room is.
This is the library. It's where the men of the house would have conducted their business each day. This room will be restored to the expansion era, which dates from 1894 to 1920. We do have some good examples on the ceiling in this room of decorative stencil work underneath all this white paint.
And how much is it going to cost to completely restore this room?
This particular room we're estimating at about $70,000. This staircase here is original to the house, and as you notice as we go up it, there's not going to be a lot of creaking or anything to it, which the architects and conservators assure us means it's well built. We do have a fun story to go along with this, though. We spoke with Jack Meek about a year and a half ago, and he was one of the last children, Meek children, to live in the house, and he said that they slid down the banisters every day.
Wow, that's quite a slide. So tell us about this room we're in now. It looks much more complete than the others.
This is Mr. Meek's bedroom, and this is actually original Meek furniture that you're seeing here in this room. It was purchased by the Reams when they bought the house from the Meeks and is currently on loan to the Park District. You'll also notice in this room that we have still a fairly decorative molding as well as a medallion where the light fixture is, which is rather unusual in Victorian houses. Most of the time the decorative features stopped on the first floor, but as we go through the rooms up here, you will notice that there is still some of it here.
And so this is Mrs. Meek's bedroom?
This is Mrs. Meek's bedroom.
They had separate bedrooms?
They did.
I guess that was common in that era.
It seems to have been fairly common. The furniture in this room that you're seeing is also original to the house. It did belong to the Meek family as well, and like the furniture in Mr. Meek's room, was sold to the Reams, and the Reams currently have it on loan to the Park District. This room has also been expanded. The morning room behind us was added on, as well as the bathroom, and the fireplace was also completely redone. For a variety of reasons, this room is actually going to be returned to the last Meek era, which is the 1920 to the 1940 time period, mainly because of the fireplace. We're told by conservators that this is an extraordinary example of a fireplace from that time period and the type of decorative tile work that would have been done. And it seems a shame because it's in such good condition to pull it out and put in a marble fireplace like would have been there originally. And in addition to that, the bathroom that was added on later is also a good example of that time period with all the tile work and the colors. So it would just seem more appropriate to leave this room. This room is a very good example of late 20s, early 30s style in tile work. All the way from the color to the size of the tiles being a little bit larger than what we're used to seeing today.
Are those circular tiles on the floor?
They are a circular type of tile, which was also popular during that time. Right now we're standing in one of the two servants' rooms that are adjacent to each other. They're much smaller than the other rooms in the house. You can see some of the damage that we're working against in the house in this closet here due to a large amount of water leaking from various places, both through exterior molding and drains. We have a severe mold problem in this window. One of these rooms will be returned to the first time period, the Patriarch era, 1869 to 1894. The other room will be returned to the second Meek era, or the expansion era, that's from 1894 to approximately 1920. The gardens that you're looking at straight out from this balcony are original to the property. When the Park District took over the house from the Reams in the 1960s, they did bring in a person to catalog all of the plants on the property. And between that and pictures of the house and the land, the Park District was able to recreate the garden that was in front of the house, including with the pathways and everything. The fountain is original as well, and it has been restored. And when we were interviewing Jack Meek, he did have a picture of this looking basically from the same angle, and the palm tree that you're seeing in front of you was probably about a third of the height that it is now, and the fountain was shooting about 20 feet in the air. This here is an unfinished attic space, but there are some interesting features that can be seen in this room. They're theorizing that it's possible when Mr. Meek built the house that he was experimenting with upgrades for earthquake safety, as it was built right after the big 1868 quake on the Hayward Fault. Two places that can be seen. One on this wall over here across from us, you can see that the siding on the interior is on a diagonal. Exterior is horizontal, just like you would expect to see. So there's actually two layers of siding diagonally being placed to provide a little bit more support. In addition to that, on the inside of the walls, you can see that the lath and plaster is also set on the diagonal, which is unusual for these types of houses. Normally it, once again, is also horizontal. Okay, we're about ready to go up into the cupola, which is the area of the house where the landowner could go to look over his lands. It has windows on all four sides, so you'll be able to see that you can see a distance in each direction. And there's actually a very nice breeze up here on a nice windy day. You can see a long ways in either direction from here, especially on a clear day. You'll notice the hills out in the background here. The Meek property actually started out by Llewellyn Boulevard, which is just at the front of the property that still exists, and then extended back towards downtown Hayward and out in either direction a little bit. The Carriage House is also original to the property and has been restored. It basically is composed of a large room when you first enter in, where carriages, buggies, that type of thing would have been housed. Behind that, there are two tack rooms, followed by a stall area in the back of the building, and the stalls do still exist.
So a big house like this, often there are ghost stories associated with it. Is that the case with the Meek house?
It actually is. There's a lot of stories from people over the years. Some of the most prominent ones being that on the back side of the house here, they've seen the figure of a lady standing in the window at night, as well as one of the caretakers saying that his dog won't come in the house. We recently did a paranormal investigation here with the American Paranormal Research Association, which was a lot of fun. We spent 2 nights ghost hunting here in the house, and we did capture 4 electronic voice recordings, 2 in the basement and 2 up here, which consisted of 3 people.
And what were they saying?
In this room right here, we caught a man and a woman conversing with each other. The lady said, I'd have to listen to him again to be exact, but she said something like, "I already told you," and the man said, "Yes, I know."
Do you think it was Mr. and Mrs. Meek?
We don't know. They didn't identify themselves. Hopefully in future ones we'll be able to find that out.
Okay. What about the other two voices?
We caught two in the basement. One was a little boy, or a child anyway, saying something that is the equivalent of "Where's Molly?" The name that he was saying was a little bit garbled, so we're not exactly sure. It's not Molly or something like that. And then there was the voice of a lady that was very distinct with an accent that said "go."
So now you've had a chance to see this magnificent house, to look at the ballroom and the parlors, the dining room, the solarium, the wonderful grounds around the house. Hayward Area Historical Society is partnering with Hayward Area Recreation and Park District to restore the house and operate it as a historic house museum. Because of the different family members who lived in the house and the changes they made to the house, we've determined to interpret the house in three different periods. The first period is 1869 to 1894. This was the era that William Meek and Fidelia Meek lived in the house. After that, Horry was inside the house with his family, and that takes us to the 1920s, when Horry's son Harold was living in the house with his family. They lived in the house until the late 1930s. So those are the three periods that we're restoring the house to. As you can see, the house is a work in progress. We've identified the historic periods we're working towards restoring it to, but we have a lot of work to do, a long way to go. Hayward Area Historical Society has already restored some critical infrastructure in the house. We've replaced the roof, we've worked on electrical and plumbing and done some of the drainage work around the house. So a lot of that is done, but the actual restoration of the rooms is the next big step. We've actually worked with an architectural restoration firm in San Francisco to lay out a complete plan for restoring the house to those three periods. It's all been laid out for us. We just need the resources to make it all happen. We're looking for donors to help sponsor individual rooms, which will cost anywhere from $25,000 to $70,000 per room, depending on the size, as well as helping support a lot of the interpretive materials that will come afterwards, the fun stuff, the exhibits, and the children's activities. So there's a lot of work to be done, and we could sure use your help. We're doing other things to raise awareness about the house and its history. We're bringing people inside through special projects. Last October, we put on a wonderful Days of the Dead exhibition curated by Hayward artist Fernando Hernandez. Visitors came inside the house to see the Days of the Dead exhibits and altars constructed by Bay Area artists and enjoyed a wonderful time there, and also came out on our Community Day, which was a day of activities and fun that were held on the grounds around the house, celebrating Days of the Dead and introducing people to the Meek Mansion. Thank you for joining us today as we learned all about the Meek Mansion, this wonderful architectural gem in the East Bay. And to learn more, visit our website, haywardareahistory.org. This is Myron Friedman, Executive Director of the Hayward Area Historical Society. Thank you.